Good morning, Janice.
Good morning, Anthony.
Today we're going to answer the question of what should you outsource in your life? So, did you know that rich people don't do chores? They outsource.
Ah,
And yeah, you probably should too. So, we're going to talk about how you decide what you should outsource and what you should do for yourself. And we'll even run down a list of the tasks that you can outsource today, from as little as household chores to business tasks and even personal finance items. And then lastly, at the end, we'll talk about some next level outsourcing things in the future. Yeah.
this sounds great.
Cool. All right. So this whole episode is inspired by Naval Ravikant. He is a Silicon Valley investor and sort of philosopher, actually. And he wrote a thesis called How to Get Rich Without Being Lucky, right? So I know that title is great. This is a great title, by the way. I'll put a link to
really great. Yeah.
I'll put a link to the whole thing in the show notes. But one of the points he talks about is you should have an aspirational hourly rate. Okay. Basically, that's an hourly rate where if there's something that needs to be done, and you can get it done for less than that aspirational hourly rate, just hire somebody else to do it. Okay.
Makes
So
complete sense.
So, for example, when he was young, Naval set his aspirational hourly rate at $5,000 per hour. Ridiculous, right?
Okay.
This is way before he got rich. He sold a few companies in Silicon Valley, but he was basically treating himself like his time was that valuable. And today, he credits that approach to and allowing him to focus on important things to why his actual hourly rate is actually way higher than that now.
Wow.
So when you're setting your aspirational hourly rate, he advises that it should feel absurdly high. It shouldn't be a reasonable amount. Because if it doesn't feel like uncomfortable, then it's probably not high enough. It should be something that you should only be working on the most important things. So always factor this in when you make a decision. For example, if your personal hourly rate is $60, whatever, per hour, and you think it'll take you about an hour and a half to take care of this task, but you can get it done for, let's say, $40,
Right.
then just outsource it, right?
Kind of making that the what do you call it? Cost benefit analysis. Like if you make $60 an hour is your, what did you call it? Your personal hourly rate.
Mm-hmm.
But how much is it going to cost you to do the project? Yeah.
So the reason for this, I know everyone's going to think, the dollars and cents don't always work out that way. You have to understand that we all have a finite amount of high mental energy per day. We can't do everything well all day long, right? We just get fatigued. So you want to use that high level mental energy on things that are going to change your life, that are going to move the needle, not on fighting with customer service on this item or swifting the floors or doing the laundry.
Right.
We'll get into examples later.
Right. Yep.
So those are Naval's thoughts from how to get rich without being lucky. And I want to add just 4 points to clarify maybe how I think you should approach it. So this is predicated on being productive. You can't have this really high hourly rate so that you can play video games all day.
You can't? I don't understand that.
I
My
feel like
12-year-old thinks that, but yeah.
It's probably assumed, but just in case nobody caught that as something, I'm just going to put it out there.
Thank you for clarifying. Yes.
But I don't mean you have to be productive all the time. It's not like you can only trade or outsource something if you necessarily at that moment have something more productive to do, because downtime has value too. Your rest, your recharge.
Yes.
So if you work really hard for 6 hours a day, the other hours are not free time just to work more. You need that rest to make sure those 6 productive hours are as productive as possible. Do you agree with that mentally?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if you don't take downtime and you don't rest and sleep, then your next set of productive hours are not going to be productive.
So if you're using those non-work hours to do chores that you hate, or fight with customer service, I think I already used that one, then you're actually draining your productivity in your work times because you'll be fatigued. Yeah.
Yes, you're exhausted dealing with all the other things. So when you start, you're already behind the 8 ball per se, because you're tired and you're not ready to be productive. I absolutely get it. Yep.
So I also want to point out that this is not just for entrepreneurs. This seems like it might be, you're an entrepreneur, you could always just work more, get another client, or close another deal. That's why every marginal hour is better for you. No, this applies to employees too, because you could be using that time or energy to get a new certification, to continue your education, to network with peers in other companies that are related to your field. These are all important for your career, which is your business, right? Your career is your business.
Absolutely. Yes.
So it doesn't have to be about a virtual paralegal or a professional executor or an online business. This applies across the board.
Yes, absolutely.
And lastly, I want to make sure that everyone, you factor in your expected return. This is I think it's an economics concept. And what I mean by that is it's not always going to be a simple hour for hour comparison. Okay. You can't necessarily say, oh, well, a virtual assistant, I'll use that example, costs $30 an hour to do this task, but I could do it in I don't know, an hour, or in the amount of time that equals $50 of my time, right?
Right.
So it sounds like a no-brainer to work with a virtual assistant on that, but not necessarily, because expected return includes things like security, risk, cost of setup, training, and whether or not it's repeating. So if this is a one-off type of deal, you have to remember that there will be an amount of time spent training that virtual assistant to get that $30 per hour worth of output. And if this is only a one-off thing, it's probably not worth training somebody to do it. Right.
Right. You have to look at that over time and say, okay, now I'll be able to call this person and then she'll just know what to do.
Right.
We've cut out all the training. Now it's definitely worth my time at that point.
Or that training is amortized or spread out
Yes.
over the many, many, many times that you'll be using that virtual assistant.
Correct.
Right. There's also security and things like that. So let's say I'll use you use a housekeeper, right? Or a housekeeping service, just as an example. But there are security risks. Let's say 1 out of every 100 housekeepers will get sticky fingers and lift something. I don't want to point fingers at anyone, but just as humanity, right? So this is really hard to do. It's very academic, but let's say you expect to lose about $50 worth of goods or cash or jewelry for every 100 instances of your house being cleaned for you, right?
Right.
I know I'm such a downer, but
it's true. I mean, you do have that's reality. That's life. That could happen.
So then you don't just calculate the hourly rate of the housekeeper, but you calculate the hourly rate plus that $50 amortized over 100 instances of, the risk of that happening. Does that make sense? Am I explaining that all right?
No, it absolutely makes sense, because I mean that's the reality of it, is that there are great people, but there's also, you could have that 1 in 100 that
it's just life.
You have to.
It doesn't have to be theft. It could be
Correct.
accidents, anything,
Anything at all. Yeah.
All right, cool. So now let's do the fun part. Let's run down the list of chores, personal items, and other things that you can or maybe should be outsourcing. I'll start with the things that people have outsourced, but maybe they don't think of it as outsourcing. Mowing your lawn or shoveling your snow.
Yes. Yeah.
For decades, you hire Billy from down the street to do this for you. That is outsourcing, right? Because it's worth it for you to pay Billy $5 than to do it yourself and break your back. Pretty much, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And people do that all the time because it makes sense. You're like, oh, the grass is really high. Well, let's see. $30 cut the grass. Yeah.
Dog walking.
All the time.
Is that a big thing in the suburbs? Hiring dog walkers?
You know what's funny? They have the dog walkers, but what they have now are companies that come around and clean up after the dog's in the yard. I see those everywhere now, which you're thinking, oh, that's disgusting. But actually it's brilliant, because how many people when you get home from work, you're like, oh, I really don't want to go outside and clean that. Yeah. But there's companies that do it. I think that's brilliant.
I mean, just anything in your house that you might not like doing. I mean, some people love mowing the lawn, like it's therapeutic for them. If it truly is, cool, then you wouldn't outsource it.
Wonderful. Right.
But if you can't stand the idea of going to a crowded supermarket, now there's things like Instacart or Peapod. You can outsource that. I mean, I think there's a fee for those services, but it may be totally worth it. Yeah.
I'll sound like on my soapbox for a minute. So, I have a job. I own the business. I have kids. I have a family. It's crazy life. I'm surprised I have hair. It's not falling out. But I was sitting at my son's baseball. It was a practice, and I'm thinking, we have no food in the house. There's just no way. I worked, 10 hours. Now I'm here. What do I do? And someone said, oh, you can order them on your phone. So I sat at a baseball game, and I put down everything I wanted. I pressed the button. I think it cost me $5, to which I weighed out, now we're going to have food for breakfast. I don't have to drive there, get extra food. And then I set a certain time the next morning, 8:30 in the morning, it shows up. It was life-changing. But again, anyone could do that, whether you are an entrepreneur or a parent. And so
I think it all boils down to making sure you value your time,
Right.
And it expands to cooking. If you don't like cooking, but you don't necessarily want to order in, well, you can order in, but if you want something that's a little healthier and a little closer to cooking, there's services like Blue Apron. And I'm not trying to plug any of these companies. I'm just citing what I know.
No, but they're out there. Yeah. There's tons of them now. You can get the HelloFresh. I mean, they come in a kit and you put it all together.
Yeah. Even driving is now getting outsourced.
Yes.
You don't want to sit around in traffic? Uber, or Lyft, whatever.
Yep.
So let's get into some more intimate areas that might be a little bit more, folks might feel a little more iffy about these. Laundry and dry cleaning. I know a lot of people have issues with people touching their intimates or whatever.
Oh.
But if you don't and you don't like doing laundry, I think in the city you can get, I think it's $20 per huge sack to get your laundry done.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And actually, if you live in a building that has coin-operated machines, that's actually really close to break even. So you might just...
Yeah, that's pretty expensive.
Well, because it's like $2 per load plus for wash and then $2 for dry. So that's... Anyway, I don't want to do the math.
I can tell you how expensive it is. My family of 6, our washing machine broke. We had to go to the laundromat.
Yes.
We had 6 people. I think we had 36 loads of laundry at one time because we had so many clothes. Oh, yeah. It was... I think we spent almost $100 that day in washing clothes. Like, it was crazy.
Cleaning lady, we talked about that. There's maybe security issues, but whatever. That kind of stuff doesn't seem to happen too often. Some areas that are pretty intimate, babysitters and nannies. I mean, what's more precious than your child, right? But that is a flourishing market in the New York area.
It is, because it's also important to spend. You were talking earlier about your downtime. You need a few minutes to have some downtime with your spouse, and you have a babysitter. I absolutely think it's very important to do.
And at the other end of the spectrum of vulnerable family members, you have home aides for your elderly relatives, right? I mean,
correct. Yeah.
I think a lot of people feel weird about that and feel like they should be the ones taking care of their parents, but you might not be equipped for the medical and just in terms of patience dealing with all the issues of an older folk. So, yeah.
No, my parents had my grandmother. She just passed at 98, but they had. Oh, she was wonderful. But they had somebody that would come in twice a day to help her with the needs they weren't equipped to do. The most wonderful lady that we've ever met, ever. But that's the kind of thing that hiring took that pressure off, and they were able to work a little bit more, and it was very helpful. So I would definitely recommend looking at that.
And moving on from like those intimate personal services, I mean, personal finance. I think most people have moved on from doing their taxes themselves to either a CPA or TurboTax. So that's kind of locked into society's acceptable sort of outsourcing. Financial planning, a lot of people go to a CFP or an advisor. And shameless plug, more and more people are hiring a professional like myself to be the executor of their loved one's estate, because doing probate stinks. Nobody wants to do it.
I think we've done about 50 podcasts on that, on how hard it is to be an executor. It is, but weigh it out. How much time are you going to spend doing that when you can hire you that you've done it? How many times? It's going to be a lot easier. Yeah.
And so there's definitely a trend where more and more folks are realizing the benefits of that. And for business owners, I mean, getting someone to do your bookkeeping, that's been around forever. But now people are beginning to realize the benefits of hiring a general administrative assistant for scheduling, letters, scanning. And Janice, you can talk more about this because this is right up your alley.
It is. And I always tell people, do what you do, and the stuff you don't want to do, that's what we do. Think about it. You're driving the car, you're on the subway, you're driving the bus, and you're like, oh, I forgot to send a letter to so-and-so. So you take out your phone, you dictate a letter, you send it off, and then by the time you get to the office, you have the letter ready. I mean, you save time, you saved money, because how long would that have taken you to get to the office? You type your letter. You inevitably have to go back and fix something else again. So you weigh that out. You think, well, let's see, if I make $100 an hour and I just spent $5 on a letter, it really works out. And then you talked about making more time for meet and greets. Here's something silly. You go to a meet and greet, you come home with a stack of business cards this high, right? How many times? We've all done it. I have stacks. What do you do with it? Well, that's easy. So, right. It's kind of a pain, but someone like my company, we take the cards, we make it into a nice spreadsheet or put it in your phone so you have it somewhere other than, who carries around their stack of business cards and I know I knew somebody from this business, but I have to get to it. But now you have, a couple of dollars, you can get to it. So just little things like that you think, what do I got to do with this? Well, there's someone out there that can help you.
Yeah, the list is endless. There are so many
endless. Yeah.
micro chores as a business owner that can really just sap your productivity. Just get with an assistant and figure out what's worth. I outsourcing so you can really focus on your core business. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, you lawyer, and then I'll do the other stuff that you don't want to do. And then it works out in the end. It's perfect.
So now let's jump into the fun stuff, the future stuff, things that are beginning to get outsourced, and I think will be outsourced more in the near future. Not necessarily all of these. So personal assistants, everything you described, I'm beginning to see more and more on a personal level, specifically for parents. Like scheduling the kids' doctor appointments and camps and all this stuff, it's actually like a full-time job.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing a lot more folks outsourcing that to assistants who specialize in running the family household.
Interesting. Oh, that would be really nice. We have 6 schedules that we're trying to coordinate.
Just doctor appointments, making sure you meet all the insurance deadlines, this and that. It's just a lot of juggling and things to keep up in here,
Yeah. Oh, that would be nice.
So getting a little bit more esoteric is surrogacy. So this is not about fertility, but rather about who carries the child. Not everybody wants to, or just for whatever reason, wants to actually carry their genetic child in their belly. So it may be an up-and-coming thing to have your egg and your seed, whatever, carried to term, but in a healthy young person's body. So that you can continue, you don't have to basically put your life on hold for 9 months. I hate to put it that way, but
no, but that's what people are, and I think it's becoming bigger. I personally know of 2 people that do that for a whole gamut of reasons. But
as the parents or as the surrogate who carries the baby?
As the surrogate who carries.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So the big famous example of this is Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. I think 2 or more of their children were brought to term this way.
Okay.
And I think one of Michael Jackson's kids too, but don't quote me on that. That might be wrong. Yeah.
No, but it's definitely interesting. It's like you said, it's a different type of outsourcing, but it's something that people need help with.
And just for the sake of humanity, there are men and women who you want to procreate and have, pass on their genetic material, but you don't want to take them out of circulation for a year or however long, right? You want them to be continuing to add to humanity. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
So the last one is kind of a fun one. I don't know if you've heard of this, Janice. There are also blood boys.
Okay. I'm listening. It just sounds funny. I have no idea what that is.
There's a trend in some areas where, and I do not know the science that backs this up, but where you'll swap out some of your blood for somebody who's younger and healthier.
Oh, that's funny.
Right? So you'll sit side by side with the 25-year-old surf dude or whatever.
Right.
And just you'll each be plugged into a blood transfusion machine, and you'll just be swapping out blood.
It sounds like a movie. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi
kind of
movie. Yeah.
No, it's happening. It's been happening for a while. Yeah.
To give me more energy like a 25-year-old because
I think that's the theory. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
I have no idea how legitimate the science is behind that. I mean, some really smart and famous people do it, so I think there's at least some basis for it. I don't know if that's going to go mainstream, but hey, if surrogacy is coming up, why not blood?
Right?
Yeah.
I guess what you're saying is really there's an outsource for almost everything.
Pretty much. Yeah. All right. Hey, if you guys can think of anything that we haven't brought up, any cool or interesting outsourcing things, let us know. Let us know how outsourcing has worked out for you in your life or your business. I'd love to hear the stories. And otherwise, we'll talk to you next time. Bye, Janice.
Bye. We'll talk soon.
Bye, guys.